Welcome to the Creative Chats podcast with Mike Brennan. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artists, makers, and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. You can check out my work on my website, which is mikebrennan.me. And while you're over there, check out the resources I've created with you in mind as a fellow creative person. I have something called Daily Creative Habit, which is basically a process and pathway that I lead people through. And I've created resources around that, like the Daily Creative Habit Journal, which is a 90-day self-guided journal, allowing you to basically track and measure what it is that you want to do and are doing creatively. So this way, it's not just kind of like, I think I'm kind of working on some things and maybe I'm making progress or maybe not, or have all these things that just seem disjointed creatively. This is a tool to help you really set intention and then take action and then track and measure to make sure that you're showing up for yourself and your creativity every single day, even if it's in small ways, because consistency is key. And that's the thing that really unlocks you and your ability to be able to get to the next level and actually see a lot of the things that you want and have envisioned to get them out into the world. So if you're interested in that, you can swing by mikebrennan.me. You can also go to dailycreativehabit.com, direct link right to that journal and some other resources I have for you there. Now, today I have a guest on today, Dustin Black, and Dustin and I just have some great conversation around just his creativity and what it has looked like, what fuels him in his work. He's an executive creative director at Preston Spire, and he just loves to engage with this work in such a way that he's utilizing his gifts, his abilities, but also bringing it out in other people in the teams that he leads. So we talk about everything from AI to creative leadership to the personal projects that are passion projects that are important, and kind of everything in between. And so I think no matter what your creative expression is today, you can lean in and hear something that you can take away and apply to your context, to your journey, to your creativity today. So without further ado, here is my creative chat with Dustin Black. Well, Dustin, welcome to the Creative Chats podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to chat.
Yes. I mean, I can tell for anyone who's watching this on YouTube too, I can see some work behind you there that has already caught my attention. So I love when we have guests that have, backgrounds that there's stuff happening. So
yeah, I'm a big standing desk advocate. So I do a lot of pacing. And so during the pandemic, I really wanted just faces on the screen, even when I wasn't on the screen. So it started as Shepherd Ferry and then expanded down this giant wall. It was basically a bunch of art that was sitting in the basement. I finally had an excuse to put it up, but yeah,
love it.
And it's great. It's a nice, when I hop on calls, it usually is like a really quick way to start a conversation, or there's different pennants up that are from different places. So I had clients, I had like a Dallas client. So I had a Dallas pennant and different things. So like, there's different ways to intro the conversation with the wall.
Yes. Well, you're doing it well. So good job.
Great. Perfect.
So, Dustin, I would love to start the conversation off by just dialing things back. I love asking this question of my guests about what did creativity look like for you as a kid?
Wow. Yeah. I think I've always been someone who's looked at like life a little bit differently or tried to see the world through just slightly different lens. Always grew up, I give my folks a hard time, like always grew up never having like GI Joes. I had Mask, I never had Legos. I had Constructs. I always had like the knockoff version of whatever was out there. We didn't do Disney. We did World of Fun with Shirt Tails and stuff. It was just like everything was like this second. And so like it kind of just taught me to see and like, look and build characters in a different way. And I think I've always just kind of kept that with me of like, how do you twist what you've got, or how do you, make the best or find a way to like see things a little bit differently. And it stuck with me. I was really big into speech in high school, and that was a really big like, oh, like there's a way to entertain people and keep them like engaged in your story, by finding some human insights that I can connect with them and bond with them in a way, because we all kind of have some shared stories or shared insight. And so it kind of was just something that, like, from seeing the world a little bit differently to, recognizing what it takes to connect with somebody. It's just been a thread to, like, you know, bond and have a connection with somebody.
Yeah, yeah. That's great that you've been able to identify that that has something that started back then that you've taken forward and that has continued to be a tool for you, right? I mean, I guess it's like a little bit of resourcefulness too in there, right? Because you're like you said, taking what you have and how can you put a twist on it, or how can you look at it differently. I must have this visual of you holding something in your hand and looking at it from like different angles, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Like, how do we build this differently, or how do I take the plan that was given to me and just change it slightly or make it my own? And that's something I really impress upon my kids. Like, hey, yeah, there's a pattern, but how would you make it your own? Or sure, what do you think the other kids are doing, and how would you do it just slightly different, or put your personality on it? Halloween's coming up, so there's just a lot of brainstorming at my household, and I've kind of got them both in this notion of, like, it's more fun to make your Halloween costume, like that's your own person. You can always go buy something off the shelf, but if you make it, then that's your personality and it lets people see you. The problem is they're still a little bit younger, so that usually just means dad's doing 90% of the work. So we're starting to, this year, I'm a little like, I think you need to, like, think of an idea you can do.
Yeah, and you also don't want to rob them of the the learning experience and the satisfaction of going like, hey, like I actually set out to do this and I did it.
Yeah, and I really, I have a lot of really strange side hobbies. When we can dive into, like, the creative role of that, but, like, a big part of why I do a lot of them is to teach the girls, like, I don't know how to do it. Like, I don't know the next step, and I'm very vocal with them of, like, I have no idea how to do this, but, like, I have to figure it out, and here's how I'm going to figure it out. And it's sort of like that curiosity and that sort of, like, problem solving that I think is so important to teach to them, because it's like, I'm not going to know how to, what the world's going to be like, but if I can at least teach them to, like, know that there's going to be uncomfortableness with growth, and then things are going to sound, I don't know how to do it, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't start or shouldn't try. And that's kind of how I got started. I make these giant 5-foot felt birds and 5-foot felt fish, that are made out of a cricket with a CNC cutter that cuts all these felt pieces that I put together over a foam substrate. And so it's been fun having the girls kind of watch me make it, and have them help me with parts of it. And there are times when they see me build up a big section of it, and then I cut it off and start over, and I tell them, I was like, that's part of the creative process, is trying things and learning and, going back and revisiting, but I don't beat myself up over it. You just have to kind of keep moving and trying different things.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because, I so relate to that. And my way of learning has been that of throw yourself into it and figure it out as you go. And I don't think that anyone ever really told me that that was a legitimate way to learn, right? Because school teaches you like, here's the book, go read the book, study the book. You have your midterm, your finals, maybe some tests in between, but like that's your way of learning. And that was not the way I learned. And so a lot of times I was frustrated by school. I was frustrated by these learning opportunities because it didn't allow me to enter it the way I needed to follow curiosity, to figure something out and go like, I don't know, I need to gather around me maybe some other people who have gone before me, see how they've done it, and then just get my hands in the mix and start doing something and then go, oh, okay, now it makes more sense, right? I mean, was that something that came naturally to you? Was that part of even that you recognized earlier on, or did you have to kind of figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, I mean, the ideas of tests and the idea of, like, school is like there's an answer, and it's like that's not the case. But you kind of have to, like, learn the fundamentals. So I did a lot of art classes. I'm double majored in art and advertising, and the art. I remember my oil painting classes. They'd be like, "You're going to copy this, Monet or whatever." Like, we want it to be stroke for stroke exactly the same. And you're like, What are we doing? We're in art. Like, why are we copying? And then it's because you got to learn the fundamentals. You got to learn, like, the basics, and then they're like, all right, now let's start breaking it. Let's start figuring it out, and let's start changing it. And so I think that's a big part of it, is like, it's there's fundamentals of learning, and there's fundamentals of curiosity, and there's fundamentals of whatever trade you're in. and you kind of got to master those. So then you know how to twist them, and you know how to like break the rules and do things, because their color theory is color theory. I'm not going to invent a new color theory, but I need to like know the basics so that when I go break it or when I go play with it, it lives in that world.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's where some people stop. They just fall short of that, of going, I'm afraid to break the rules, or I'm afraid to go to that next place. Like, you told me what to do, you gave me a box, and I'm staying in the box. And as long as I stay in the box, then I know it's safe in here. And I'm like, but the good stuff, it's on the other side. That's when, like you said, you start breaking rules, you start pushing past. I remember the moments when I was finally like, I'm not gonna go towards photorealistic stuff anymore. Like, that was what I was, that was benchmarked as like, this is the stuff that's the masters did, and this is what this looked like. And I was like, but that's just frustrating to me. And I feel my posture, even like, it's so tight and controlled. And I'm like, that's not me. I'm like, I need loose lines and bold colors and splatter marks. And I'm like, I need to lean into that even more, because that's what speaks to me. That's who I am. And I think when you're right in learning those things and then pushing past it and then going, I'll use some of those pieces,
And
but
it's
I'm
uncomfortable, but like the idea of you putting yourself out there, other people will be magnetically attracted to that. I mean, like having a POV, having a personality, having a unique voice. That, and it's hard, and it is like a little uncomfortable because you're like, I don't know, am I different? Which is another thing you kind of get taught, like, don't be too different, like, do what everybody else is doing. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down. But as you're probably seeing it in your professional career and stuff, as you start to kind of make your own distinct personality and distinct point of view, that's magnetic, and people are attracted to it, and that's a good way to sort of develop an ethos around you.
Yeah, yeah. So talk a little bit about like how your work has evolved over the years, like what you where you started and kind of where you are now, in terms of the professional part, as well as maybe even some of the side things you talked about.
I mean, I think that there's just so much happening right now. If we're going to talk like professionally, and it kind of ties into this, like so much happening with like the speed of AI, right? Like AI is the new buzzword, and AI is like, is it going to steal all of our jobs? Is it, where's the, what is the art? Where's the humanity? So the evolution in the last year has really been around that conversation. But I think it ties into what we're talking about, like in terms of like AI is really good at synthesizing. It's really good at averaging. It's very good at like taking complex and like, putting it together, but it's really bad at creating new things. It's really bad at like finding a human insight and connecting it, because a lot of those human insights just come from lived experiences, or like those weird little quirks that make you unique, that robots aren't going to be able to read and figure out. And so I think that's what we're seeing is like AI is so good at so many tasks, but it's really not good at that creative. It's really not good at making something new. Or if it is good, if you can tell it to like, hey, give me a bunch of random stuff, and I'm going to be the eye that decides which one. I'm going to curate the answers and curate the right. It still takes that curation. It still takes that like human touch to be like, oh, that will resonate, or that's good. It really has no idea. If it's just pulling together random things, it has no idea of the 10 which are good. And if you ask it, it'll tell you, but it's just randomly picking one and sort of guessing. But that's where I like, so I think that like it's growing up with that background of like trying new things and being curious. And now with new tools, it's when Photoshop came around, that was is that going to change the business? Or is cameras going to get rid of painting? No, these are all just new tools we all have to figure out how to use. And so that I think has been kind of one of the most exciting parts of creativity lately, is just what it can be. Because AI really has, in the professional, like I'm an executive creative director at Preston Spire. We're an independent ad agency in Minneapolis, but it's gotten rid of excuses. It you can go in there and just create a magical world that just comes out of your head, visually, and pull together things you wouldn't have been able to pull together years ago, or 6 months ago, or 8 months ago. And so by eliminating those excuses, it's really opened up our toolbox as creatives to like, oh, let's try this, let's do this. And that's going to continue to accelerate. From a business side, it's tough because I think the efficiencies and the idea that like maybe 100-person agency can do now the 60 people with AI, so it will sort of start to pull down on headcount because people can work a little faster. They can bring those ideas to life a lot quicker. But it's an exciting time to kind of have that sort of curious mindset and have a new tool to play with.
Hmm. How much of that right now is actually being implemented where you are in terms of like a final product? Because I know like sometimes you use AI for things and you're like, oh boy, like that was way off. And sometimes it's like, well, it's close, but it's not quite, and it struggles to really produce something that you can actually use in the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we're using it for lots of different things at this point. Like there's a lot of efficiency plays happening, take something really complex and help us pull out some main points. Help us we've done 10 RFIs before, help us write a new one with AI so that like it's a good job of synthesizing sort of like past work. From an image and a generative side, like it's phenomenal for doing storyboards. It's really great for showing work like, hey, I've got this idea. So instead of spending 10 hours photoshopping it or, showing a horrible sketch, I can do it in 5 seconds and show the client what we're visualizing. From an actual out into the world, I think we're kind of midstream right now. Like there's now a few companies that have done a really nice job of basically training on rights management. That's been the big problems is ethics and the rights on the front end and the back end, right? So from the front end, are you training it on images that are fair use, or are you training it on like the globe and just random Marvel movies and things like that? So Adobe's been leading that, with hey, everything we have it is trained, so now we can indemnify the image because we know where the source of it is. And then on the back end, there's been a lot of issue with like, can we copyright the image, right? So the Supreme Court came out and said, you can't copyright an AI image. Well, clients get a little nervous of like, hey, like I don't want this out there and then a competitor can use it. So there's right now just a lot of discussion, and companies are trying to quickly figure out what does human authorship mean. I was talking to a company last week and they were basically saying like they think text to image is going to be tough to copyright. There's not going to be human authorship in a text image. But if you put a sketch in there and say, I'd like to have a green car, I'd like it to kind of look like this, and it's a hand drawn sketch that then the AI interprets, that's going to be easier to defend as human authorship. And so they're basically working into their prompts like, hey, do some text to prompt, but then also give us a sketch. And then you're probably going to take 3 or 4 of them and use Photoshop to combine them. That will probably get you to the level of copyrightable imagery. So I think we're kind of midstream in terms of figuring out some of those legalities of making sure it's ethically sourced and then making sure it's copyrightable when it goes out into real world. But I think we're going to start to see more of it. I don't know if it's going to. I think it's going to be a lot of like take the same course of like Photoshop, right? Like Photoshop, when we first started seeing that come into the scene, it was just same thing. We were seeing, whatever, people driving Mercedes cars, or we were seeing, whatever, like lightning. And like, it was just like, it was very clear that was Photoshopped, which I think we're kind of in that phase of AI right now, is it's very clear that's AI. Whereas I think we're going to start to see it blend into the background and be used in really subtle ways. A lot of the ways Hollywood uses background plates and stuff now, right? Like, hey, they just added a building back there, that you didn't even notice. There's actors in the foreground, but the background's going to have larger AI components. And we're kind of exploring with that, right? A couple clients now where maybe we photograph the humans in the foreground, but the background is AI. And if it's sourced correctly and we can copyright it, then what's the difference between a CGI background or an AI background? We're both just pulling pixels, but it's just two different software sources.
Yeah, it's funny. Just as we're recording this, I think it was this past weekend, Sora 2 came out. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
Yeah.
basically, there has been, I mean, on TikTok and elsewhere, it has been flooded with all these videos now, especially of like, like Bob Ross, in different scenarios, and Fred Rogers, and all these, basically, it's people and characters that again, copyright issues, but they're people who made scenes happen that aren't real, but that look actually really real. And so blurring those lines, I think, where it's like people going like, did that really happen? Is that a real thing? Like, I don't know. Um, it's kind of interesting and kind of wild how some of this stuff is happening. And I know that they've since tried to put some constraints on what can be used for copyright and not. But I think a little bit of like the genie's out of the bottle, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's one of those like capitalism's going to capitalism. So if there is a cheaper, faster way to do it, business is going to try to find a way to do it. So I think it's on us to like, how do we do it responsibly? What are the guardrails? How do we support companies like Adobe or is it Bria? There's another one out there right now that's doing a good job of like they pay all the sources where they're getting the images from. And so if it's trained more correctly, like how do we lean into those while this experimentation is happening and people are kind of figuring out? It's a little bit of the Wild West right now.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. But like you said, it's a tool and it's definitely something to be part of the conversation, because I think sticking your head in the sand and saying like it'll just go away or whatever, like that's when people get left behind. When industries change, especially, I've seen that happen. My early days in working in an advertising agency, when computers were basically replacing the old school art department, the guy who did airbrushing and silhouetting by hand, all of a sudden
Right.
he's out of a job. And it's kind of the way of technology and the way that things work. And it's the choice is either to learn and adapt, as uncomfortable as that is. And a lot of people don't like change, but it's kind of like you need to be a lifelong learner if you're going to be in the game, especially creatively, right?
Yeah, you have to really treat yourself as, I mean, growth management is such I mean, there's all sorts of, I mean, you can just do a deep dive in how growth management happens within a company, but like that's really easy to apply to yourself personally, right? Like there's the fear zone, which is I want to keep everything the way it is, and I'm scared of outside a thought. There's a bit of a fear zone of like I'm growing and I'm trying to figure this out, but it feels uncomfortable, a curiosity. And then at the end of that, hopefully there's a growth zone. And that growth zone is like I'm learning, I'm comfortable with change, I'm okay sort of like with uncomfortableness. And the idea is to kind of keep yourself between the learning and the growth phase kind of constantly swirling, because the worst thing is if you get caught in that other phase of like, yeah, I have to learn because I see the world moving, but I'm scared of it and I just want to, like you said, bury my head in the sand. Like you have to treat yourself as a business and work on like what is my growth trajectory, or where do I want to be doing, or what satisfies me, what makes me really happy at the end of the day, and how do I feed that and not get caught up on like the tools and the bits and bops that kind of get me there, because those are going to constantly change. For me personally, I set out a few years ago and I said, look, I want to, I reflected on a lot of like values and a lot of like, why am I doing what I do? I think at the top of it is like, I just like bring creativity in the world, whatever that is, like find a new way to take out the trash, or, make a weird bird, or, let's make some advertising that no one's seen, like just bring creativity. But underneath that, like very click, one click under is be part of a financially stable organization that develops careers using creativity. And it's like that's kind of like my top of the pyramid, because it's I want to be part of something that's financially stable. Like I really value stability, and that means having a diverse range of clients. It means solving things. It doesn't mean there's great days every day, but it's being honest and transparent and making tough decisions when they have to be made. And developing careers, like I care about everybody. Like I want to, like, where do you want to be? This could be a springboard stop at this agency. You might end up someplace different in 5 or 10, and that's fine. Like we're all just kind of like trying to get to that like next stage, and like I don't, like, let's help you develop your career, and then use creativity, because it doesn't matter, like we're I'm in a creative department, but everybody's responsible for being creative, because an account person has to solve a relationship in a different way, and use creativity for that, and media there's constantly, and all of that is just this constant need to be learning and figuring out and using creativity and reinventing. And that's why I keep saying, like, I'm a really big believer in the culture of curiosity, because it's like about the only way to keep that learning and keep that idea of creativity. Because how are we going to solve AI? Well, I'm going to be curious about it. I'm going to try to figure. I'm going to ask questions. How am I going to work across disciplines? Because the work we're doing in advertising is so much more complex. It used to be, let's do 2 or 3 TV spots. Now it's do 1,000 pieces of content and put it in 20 different channels and have a funnel and blah blah blah. And it's like I need team members to help me. So I'm curious about their POV. I'm curious about their background. And curiosity is it's such a neutral thing as well, right? Like I don't, there's no, I'm not judging, but like, tell me more. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, let's explore. That's just a neutral way of like, let's just keep talking and we can try to figure this out or find that common ground. So for me, it's really just been setting that North Star of like finding a place where we can develop careers, use a culture of creativity and culture of curiosity to sort of help people get there and solve complex problems. And it it's I tell this to kids getting into the business, because that's the other side of this is like it's gotten a lot harder for the younger kids with AI and stuff, because we've seen under 25 the hiring rate in advertising has gotten significantly shrunk over the last year and a half, and they attribute that to AI. And it's one of those things where now when you're talking to kids to getting into the business, you're like, hey, like, what is that spark? Like, why are you here? Oh, you want to, you also, I see that spark in them, but how they get into the business and how you tell them to evolve is a little bit different. You're like, you need to learn AI. You need to be curious about it. You need to be consumers of culture. Like, be the social expert. Like, show up with an insight, show up with a trend, show up with those ideas, but like lean them into things that is a gap for that old 45-year-old dusty person, like, just like it, you can find ways in using the technology and using what's happening in the world to make a career still.
Yeah. If you find yourself with team members who are maybe a little less comfortable with following curiosity, and yet you've created a culture of championing curiosity, are there things that you do or that have been done that can help coax it out of somebody or get them a little bit more comfortable with it?
I think I think the best thing for leaders to do is to set expectations and set standards, right? Like, this is where we're going. Like, when things get tough, we're not just laying down sidewalk, we're building a castle. So like, what's that North Star? What's that, like, here's the expectations we have for everybody. Here is here's where we're going. It's very exciting. And I think every organization, regardless of what it is, people break into thirds, right? There's a third of people that will like, yes, and they will get that flag and they will be your go team, and they will, they're excited and they want to do it. And there's a third that does it, maybe not like super excited, but like they're hardworking, they show up every day, like they get the vision, there may not be the biggest cheerleaders, but they're there. And then there's a third that's like, I don't know, yeah, like I'm just, paying the bills or what, and I think as leaders, our job is not to bend toward the bottom 2/3, but to continue to set the expectation and continue to like, yeah, this is where we're going, and lean into that top third. And you demonstrate like, this is what success looks like, and you celebrate that success. So when that top third, and when we're winning pitches, when we're doing great presentations, like, we're going to show that to the whole organization so that they can see and get inspired and maybe move up, maybe go from the bottom third to the middle third, or the middle third to the top, like, get them excited. And then you just keep having conversations, because maybe this is a springboard, and maybe this isn't the best fit for you. Like, if this vision isn't where you're going, then maybe you would be happy someplace else or something like that. And you have to kind of have that tough conversation, or like, and you really just take it to an introspective sort of like, what motivates you? Like, why are what drives you? And if this new level of energy, or if this goal that we have as an organization doesn't motivate you, then I don't know, like, maybe that's not the best fit. So it's just, I think it's just setting those standards, celebrating wins, being public about the big things that you want to uh, have people replicate, um, and because at the end of the day, you're building a religion in a way, right? Like, religions are built around stories, they're built around rituals. So you figure out what it is the religion is going to be, and you figure out what those rituals are, you figure out what the celebration stories are, and then you just keep repeating them, and those that sort of like pick up and follow you, you'll get change eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. And you end up with people who really resonate and they become your evangelists because
Yeah.
they're like, they buy in. And then a certain point where you don't have to do as much heavy lifting because you have other people who are already excited about things. So it's kind of nice when that happens.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean that's ultimately the goal, is just, have those, the group of people, and the you want people excited. And like you said, like it goes back to what we were saying with the art. It's a business is very similar. Like you set out a vibe, you set out personality. We set out like, hey, it's this unique POV, and we'd love people to come along, because we know that there's going to be a group that can, our flavor's not going to be for everybody, but for those that like it, like, great. And we're going to find clients that are attracted to that, and I think we see that happening, and not to get too much into advertising, but it's very much a world built on flavors, and what client relationships line up well with the type of business flavor. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot of independent agencies succeed, because they actually have unique flavors out there. They're putting out unique offerings. They have unique POVs, and that's really exciting. And I hope to see more of that. And that's part of why I joined Preston Spire, was that they're independent. Because I think what we're seeing on the other side is holding companies that are kind of just like whitewashing everything, and sort of like averaging. And so those unique voices, the Goodbees of the world, the Carmichaels, like now they're just Omnicom, or whatever. Like we're losing the personality. We're losing that unique voice that, attracted people in the first place, that attracted unique clients. So
Yeah, you mentioned before celebrating the wins, and that's certainly something that I hold as a value. And in terms of celebrating, is there a project or work that you've done that sticks out to you that was like this was something that really came together in a way that it just checked all the boxes, and maybe talk a little bit about what that experience was.
yeah, I've had a couple like pitch new business experiences. I think new business in our world in advertising is like one of the best ways to put all these uh, all the preaches into practice. Like we're gonna put all these theories. Like we don't know the client, we don't know their history, so we can just, we can be our best self, and we can put our best theory forward. And like this is the version of the agency we want to like bring out. And so I was part of a pitch a couple years ago that was for a big national client, and it was just, we were all firing on all cylinders. And it was one of those where like design was bringing amazing stuff to the table, and we had strategy bringing amazing stuff to the table, and media just, and it was just like, you could tell everybody was operating on, best. And it came together into a presentation that had just a great story and looked amazing. And it was just one of those where I think at the beginning we set the goal, like this is what we want to do. We're going to set a game plan. Here are the players. Here's the check-ins. Here's the roles. Because I think that's super important in that type of thing, so that there's no confusion. There's no, you know, people need people need direction. People need decisions. People need, that strong voice. And hopefully it's influence, and hopefully there's a lot of voices that help make that up. But it's like, here's what we're doing. And it all came together, and we did maybe a 3-week pitch, and we won. It was a big national account that had big spend and is very visible. And yeah, we did a big job celebrating it, because it was like, this is our best. We did it. We wanted to put everything into theory. We did it. It felt good, and we won. And that doesn't always happen, but I think that those times that were the best are kind of always built around new business. And there's times when we lose, but we still get together and celebrate, because man, like we did it. Like we won it. Whether you win or not is out of your control. So often, we'll get through the whole thing, and they'll be like, "Oh, we just hired a new CMO, pitch is off," or get through the whole thing, and it's like, we were just trying to scare the agency of record. Like, just kidding. We're gonna go with the incumbent. And that happens, but like, let's not let external factors get into our head too much. Let's just celebrate what went right. Let's celebrate the plan we did. And that's also why, like, I don't love award shows as, like the be all end all. Like, it's just it's an external factor. It's great to win an award. It's great to get that validation. But if I'm sitting around waiting, for that level of some external judge telling me it did a great job, like that just, I feel like that's a bit of an outdated model. It's like, no. Like, what are the business results? What's the relationship like? Let's do some great work. Maybe win some awards, but like, let's keep the focus on the relationship and the work and trying to like, move the KPIs for the client, not move the KPIs for the agency.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. As we're kind of rounding out our conversation here, I'm wondering, is there a piece of advice that someone's given you that continues to live on this day that you keep before you?
That's a good one. I have a lot of I'd say the majority. I mean, like any person, I think the majority of your nuggets are pulled, from different people and stuff, right? Someone asked me the other day, on another podcast, basically, where'd you learn all this? And I'm like, it's just, you pick up pieces as you go, right? Like, you pick up little elements as you move. Um, I had a creative director once, when we talk about setting goals and getting team members to align to a bigger vision, like, he talks a lot about like the scale, and he's like, there's always this scale between you and your work, and you want that to be in balance at any given time. And so on one side is you, and you give your energy, your time, you give your ideas, give your hours, and on the other side is the agency, and we give you money, and we give you opportunities, and we give you career growth, and we give you, alignment to your personal values or whatever. And so like, you always kind of want this to be in same ish, and it'll go out of whack, but it's always like, it's a way to sort of like go into reviews or go into one-on-ones with like, hey, how we doing, how we feeling? Because when it starts to go like this one way or the other, like, you're not giving me enough opportunities, or I'm suddenly now not aligned with the vision of this agency, or like, I'm just feel like, that's fine. Like, I think you just have to like be evaluating that and realize, and then go find some place that has more of alignment, or can fit you here. And that's been a kind of a helpful, like, I use that in one-on-ones, or I use it in reviews and stuff, because it's like, hey, like, you've got really good technical, but I need your craft to go up a little bit. So what can we do to work on your craft? And, we're going to try to get you this learning opportunity, and we're going to, like, it's just kind of this back and forth. So that's one of my go-tos that was once given to me. Um, but yeah, it's, the life is built. I also like, I think personally, I like the notion. I once heard that idea of like, chase contentment, don't chase happiness. And this idea of like the goldfish that are in the swimming in the water, and they don't even realize they're in the water. Like, it's just water. And I just think that's like a great way of like, like, contentment is that water. And it's like, you're just like, this is okay. Like, I'm okay. And to sit there in social media these days and all the things like always are telling you like it needs to be better, you need to like, whereas like, no, just dial it back, just, be in the moment, be in the water, and recognize what's around you. And that sort of thing has been really helpful too, because our business is so, somebody else is winning an award, somebody else is doing that, somebody else is, whatever. And it's like, you can't live that way. It would just be, um, uh, miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. Always chasing things that are constantly shifting,
Yeah.
right? Showing up as your best self, doing your best work,
Yeah, know what
doing
drives you, know who you are, and then just try to find other people that are like-minded, and that are you know fun to work with and have similar vision.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I thank you for this, Dustin, and just you giving us a little peek into your world and how you think, how you work. And I would love for you to just let us know, like, where can people find you? How can they follow? How can they, just some links and places. Where can people go?
Yeah, happy to provide a list. DustinBlack.com is my personal site. I currently work at PrestonSpire.com. But yeah, if you're flying through the Minneapolis airport, between now and October 2026, so it's going to be there for a whole year, I have a display at the F4 in Terminal 1. Oh, big. I got 3 fish there and a big bird. It's been a ton of fun to have friends every day text me or whatever, their pictures in front of the fish. Check out the artwork. Check out some of the things I've got going on my personal site. But we can watch
Love
me
it.
build. I'm in the middle of building another bird, so you can watch me bring that to life.
Awesome. Well, I wish you all a continued success in all the endeavors you have, both personal, professional, all around. Thank you so much today.
Great. Really appreciate it. Thanks much.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.